Picture this. It is 2 in the morning.
Oh, the classic 2 a.m. dread.
Exactly. You are sitting in the glow of a laptop screen in an otherwise totally quiet, dark room. I mean, the rest of the house is entirely silent.
Right.
Maybe you can hear, like, the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen or the distant sound of a car passing on the street outside. But inside your head, your mind is just absolutely roaring.
Because you just hit submit on something huge.
Yes. You have just finished this massive career-defining presentation for work. You click save, you watch the little progress bar fill up, you close the window, and now you are just sitting there.
Staring at the default desktop wallpaper.
Just staring. And it is this profoundly specific, yet universally understood moment.
It really is. It's the exact moment when the adrenaline finally just, drains out of your system.
Yeah.
And you are left completely alone with the reality of what you have just traded your time and energy to achieve.
Right. And the wild part is, on paper, you have everything.
Oh, your resume looks fantastic.
It's perfect. You have the nice title on your profile. You have the salary that you actually dreamed of when you were younger, back when you thought, a certain amount of money would magically act as this unbreakable shield against all of life's problems.
Which is a very common illusion.
Totally. You have the outward appearance of complete, unblemished success. I mean, if someone looked at your life from the outside, they would be incredibly envious.
You'd think you had it all figured out.
But sitting there in the dark, your chest just feels incredibly tight. It feels heavy. You realize, with this kind of sinking feeling, that your banking app basically dictates your entire mood on any given day.
Yeah.
And you are constantly, desperately waiting for that one big win so you can finally, truly rest.
It's always just one more, isn't it?
Always. Just one more promotion, you tell yourself. Just one more quarter of hitting your sales targets. Just one more successful project launch. And then finally, I will be able to breathe.
But the finish line just keeps moving. I mean, that is the core illusion we all buy into. You really think you are sprinting toward a tape, but every time you get close to crossing it, someone just picks the ribbon up and moves it another 5 miles down the road.
It's exhausting.
It is. And you are expected to just keep running, but faster this time. Because now you are burdened with the heavy expectations of your previous success.
Right. You're competing against your own high score. And that is exactly the core emotional conflict we are exploring today. We are going straight into the heart of this modern exhaustion.
Yeah, it's a vital conversation.
Because we have to ask, why do you feel like you are slowly disappearing when you are supposedly doing everything right?
Yeah, why does the praise feel so incredibly hollow?
Exactly. And why does every single promotion feel less like a victory and more like a heavier, tighter pair of golden handcuffs?
That's a great way to put it.
Well, we have curated this fascinating stack of anonymous writings and philosophical frameworks in front of us today, and I have to say, they are utterly mind-bending.
They really challenge every default assumption we have.
They do. They cover the literal mechanics of universal energy, the invisible architecture of systemic compliance, and these ancient mindsets of unwavering internal resilience.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. But our mission for this audio journey is to uncover why the system actually wants you exhausted, how your energy literally dictates the reality you experience, and how you can actively build an unshakable inner sanctuary right in the middle of all this chaotic noise.
I love that framing.
Wait, let's unpack this. How do we end up in this exhausting cycle where our own ambition, the exact thing that is supposed to drive us forward, actually becomes our trap?
Well, to understand the trap, we first have to understand the architect of the trap.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, we really have to let go of a very comforting lie we constantly tell ourselves.
Okay, I'm bracing myself. What's the lie?
The foundational premise from these writings is a genuinely hard truth to swallow. They state very clearly that the world is not broken.
Wait, really?
Really?
Because, if you look at the news or just talk to literally anyone in a corporate break room, the general consensus is that everything is completely fundamentally broken.
Right. It feels broken to the individual. But from a macro perspective, it is functioning exactly as intended.
Wow. Okay.
It is a highly efficient, rigorously optimized system designed to extract your compliance, your attention, and your vital energy.
So it's not a bug, it's a feature.
Exactly. We tend to think that the corporate machine or the societal ladder fears our success. We think there is this glass ceiling we are bravely fighting against.
Yeah, that's the whole narrative of climbing the ladder.
But the system does not fear your success. In fact, it relies entirely on your relentless pursuit of it. What it actually fears, what genuinely threatens the architecture of the entire game, is your detachment.
Detachment, meaning like stepping off the board entirely.
Yes, refusing to play the game by their rules.
Because a mind that can detach cannot be manipulated.
Precisely. The system is engineered to keep you running on a treadmill, basically generating power for the machine. And one of its most potent, truly insidious weapons to keep you running isn't punishment.
It's not the threat of being fired.
No, it is actually praise.
Now that is incredibly counterintuitive.
I know it is.
Because, from the time we are in kindergarten, we are taught to actively seek praise.
Gold stars.
Gold stars, good grades, employee of the month. We are deeply conditioned to crave it.
We absolutely are. But the framework we are looking at breaks down how the system brilliantly uses praise as a weapon of compliance. Think about it psychologically. Contempt is easy to fight.
Sure, if someone is mean to me, I push back.
Right. If a manager yells at you or treats you poorly or blatantly disrespects your personal time, you naturally put up your defenses. You recognize a clear threat.
I might argue back, or I might report them to HR.
Or you might just quit and find another job entirely. Contempt creates a clear, undeniable enemy, and human beings are historically very, very good at fighting enemies.
If that makes sense.
But praise. Praise is a mirror that perfectly exploits our own ego.
Oh, wow. It's like a Trojan horse for extra work.
That is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
The system rewards your late nights and your sacrificed weekends with a pedestal. It gives you a shiny new title like Senior Executive Vice President of whatever.
Yeah, a title that doesn't really mean anything outside the building.
Exactly. Or it gives you a public shout-out in a company-wide email. It does this because it knows that highly ambitious, intelligent people will gladly sacrifice their physical health, their marriages, and their sanity for a slightly better view from that pedestal.
You become your own willing executioner.
Yes. The system doesn't actually have to force you to work an 80-hour week. It just has to make you feel like you are uniquely important for doing so.
You hang yourself to get a better view. That is a chilling visual, but it makes so much sense. I remember in my 20s, I was working at this mid-sized firm, and my boss pulled me aside late on a Friday.
Oh no, I know where this is going.
Yeah. He looked me right in the eyes and said, "You are the only one I trust to handle this massive account over the weekend."
And let me guess, you felt amazing.
I felt so special. I felt totally chosen. So naturally, I canceled my weekend trip with my friends. I stayed in the office until literally midnight on a Saturday, and I ordered terrible takeout.
Yep.
And looking back now, I wasn't special. I was just the cheapest, most naive labor available, and my ego was easily bought with a single compliment.
That is the absolute textbook example of the trap.
Mm.
And to keep us from realizing we are in this trap, the system employs what these writings refer to as the tyranny of tags.
The tyranny of tag. Let's break that down. What exactly is a tag in this specific context?
A tag is any label that society assigns to you or that you voluntarily adopt for yourself to define your identity within the system.
So job titles.
Job titles are the most obvious ones, yes. But tags also include your social status, your demographic labels, your political affiliations, your tax bracket. The mechanism of control here is just brilliant.
How does it control us?
Because we become so entirely obsessed with defending our current tags or striving desperately to acquire better, shinier tags that we spend all of our energy fighting each other.
It's like we are all wearing these ridiculous name badges, and instead of looking at the actual people wearing them, we are just furiously arguing about who has the nicest font on their badge.
That's a perfect analogy. We strive endlessly for validation based on these completely arbitrary labels. And while we are busy arguing about our tags down in the trenches, we are completely blinded to the architects of the game.
Who are sitting comfortably above the fray.
Exactly, benefiting immensely from our division and our constant exhausting striving. I mean, if you were fighting your coworker tooth and nail for the senior manager tag, neither of you is stopping to question why the company requires 80-hour weeks in the first place.
You're too busy fighting for the promotion to realize the job itself is slowly killing you both.
Precisely.
And to make absolutely sure we never question the tags or the treadmill, we are fed a very specific set of rules from childhood. The documents refer to this as the slave code.
It's a heavy term, but it fits.
It really does. These are the invisible, totally unquestioned rules of modern life. Things like hard work is the path to success.
Which is a genuinely fascinating one to analyze.
Right, because on the surface, it sounds wonderful. It sounds like the absolute bedrock of a functioning society. It belongs on a motivational poster in a high school gym.
It does. But the underlying philosophy we are exploring here argues that this concept actually weaponizes our own grit and resilience against us.
How so? Because, hard work is generally required to achieve things, right? You can't just sit around and do nothing and expect a great life.
True, effort is definitely required for achievement. No one is denying that. But the slave code version of hard work is a manipulative absolute. It teaches you to internalize systemic failure as your own personal inadequacy.
Oh, I see.
If you are working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, and still cannot afford basic housing, the system tells you that you simply aren't working hard enough.
Or maybe you aren't working smart enough.
It's always your fault. Always. If you burn out and end up in the hospital with a stress-induced heart condition, it's not the rigged system's fault for demanding an impossible inhuman pace.
Yeah.
It's your fault for not being resilient enough.
Wow.
It takes the blame entirely off the extractive machine and places it squarely on the shoulders of the individual.
It is the ultimate form of societal gaslighting.
It really is.
And there is another rule in this code that the writings highlight, which is patience is a virtue. Now, I have personally always struggled with patience, but I always just assumed that was a fundamental character flaw on my part.
Well, patience in traffic, or patience with a learning child, is absolutely a virtue. But in the context of your life's overarching trajectory, the writing suggests that patience is often weaponized as a societal anesthetic for your ambition.
An anesthetic.
Yes.
Yeah.
It actively encourages you to bleed out your most potent, energetic years, waiting quietly in line for a permission slip that is never actually written.
Just wait your turn.
Exactly. It neutralizes your revolutionary potential. Your ability to demand change or build something truly sovereign by turning your deep hunger for immediate agency into a long, highly manageable wait.
Just put your head down, do the work, wait your turn, and in 10 years, you'll get the corner office.
And while you wait, your actual life just passes you by.
There is a truly heartbreaking narrative in the materials that perfectly tragically illustrates this entire architecture of the rigged game.
Yes, the expatriate story.
All right, let's call him the ultimate good soldier.
His story is a profound cautionary tale.
The details in the text are just visceral. He was a highly specialized professional who gave absolutely everything to his multinational company. He basically lived his entire life out of sterile airport lounges and lonely hotel rooms.
A ghost in his own life.
Exactly. He missed his daughter's piano recitals. He missed major family holidays. He constantly postponed his own life, always prioritizing the company's deadlines.
He was the guy everyone relied on.
He was. He always stayed late. He was the one everyone called to fix the sudden crises. He even joked to his colleagues once, and this part gave me chills. He joked that if he ever collapsed at his desk, someone should just roll his body into a cab and send him back to his apartment so he wouldn't disrupt the office workflow.
Which is just a terrifying manifestation of how deeply the slave code had penetrated his psyche. He genuinely viewed his own physical collapse as merely an inconvenience to the machine.
It's so dark. And then, tragically, that dark joke actually became a reality. He passed away, completely alone in his apartment at a very young age, from a massive cardiac event brought on by sheer chronic exhaustion.
Just a literal casualty of a system that hails burnout as heroism.
But the most chilling part of the story isn't just his death, it's the immediate aftermath.
The company's reaction.
Right. His sudden absence was treated as a minor logistical blip. The company sent out a brief, somber email. Perhaps they bought a small floral arrangement. And within 48 hours, they had posted his job requisition online.
They simply replaced the broken cog.
And the machine kept grinding forward without missing a single beat.
Because the machine doesn't have a heart to break. It only has functions to fulfill. He sacrificed his entire existence for a tag, for hollow praise, for the illusion of progress, and in the end, the system just consumed him completely.
So hearing that, it really makes me want to ask, is ambition itself a trap? Because it sounds like we are playing this brilliantly designed, incredibly addictive video game where the only reward for beating a brutally hard level is
An exactly identical but harder, faster level.
yes, with absolutely no pause button. And the high score doesn't actually unlock anything meaningful in the real world. It just makes the enemies spawn faster and the hazards more lethal.
That is a remarkably accurate analogy.
We are paying with our actual finite lives for the privilege of playing a game we are mathematically guaranteed to never actually win.
You are absolutely right. The reward for winning a pie-eating contest is ultimately just more pie. But the consequences of playing this unwinnable game aren't just philosophical or metaphorical. They have a literal, measurable impact on our physical biology and our emotional frequency.
Which brings us to the next major layer of the writings.
Yes, how our energy actually works, physically and mechanically within this system.
Right, because we are transitioning here from the external architecture of the rigged game.
Oh, right.
You know, the jobs, the titles, the societal expectations, to the internal mechanics of how we individually operate within it. We are moving from the trap to the animal caught inside it.
Exactly. And this is where the materials begin to reveal a much deeper, almost quantum layer of reality. They introduce the concept that absolutely everything in the universe, including our thoughts, our passing emotions, and our dense physical bodies, is fundamentally energy vibrating at specific frequencies.
Now, I have to pause
I
here.
know what you're going to say.
Because when people hear vibrational frequencies and energy, they immediately think of, like, new age crystals and wishful thinking.
They think of vision boards.
Right. They think of that kind of magical thinking where if I just close my eyes and vividly imagine a red Ferrari in my driveway, it will just magically appear tomorrow morning. How is this framework different from that?
That is a crucial distinction to make. The texts do not frame this as a poetic metaphor or a magical wishing well. Not at all. They frame this as a literal operational mechanic of the human nervous system and the universe, backed by the biological reality that our bodies emit measurable electromagnetic fields.
Okay, so it's biology, not magic.
Completely. Your heart and your brain are electrical organs. They generate fields that can be measured by EKGs and EEGs in any hospital. These fields shift and change based entirely on your internal states of stress, fear, joy, or relaxation.
Okay, so this is grounded in the actual biology of how we process the world. So if you are that exhausted expatriate worker or the person sitting at 2 a.m. staring blankly at a screen with a tight chest, what is your electrical field actually doing? I assume your frequency is essentially a massive distress signal.
It's exactly distress signal. Think of your nervous system as the radio dial of reality.
The radio dial of reality, I like that.
If you are operating in a state of constant chronic stress, terrified of losing your job, anxious about your mortgage, deeply resentful about the moving finish line of your career, you are vibrating in a state of lack. Your energetic frequency is dense, heavy, and frantic.
And how does the universe respond to that?
The universe, according to the framework we are analyzing, acts like a giant, completely impartial radio receiver. It does not judge your signal.
It doesn't care if you're a good person.
No. It doesn't look at you and say, oh, this person has worked very hard, they are so tired, they deserve a break. It simply matches the signal you are broadcasting.
So, if I am constantly broadcasting on the frequency of stress and lack, I absolutely cannot expect to hear the music playing on the frequency of abundance and peace.
Precisely. If you broadcast stress, the universe simply tunes into that frequency and brings you more situations, more chaotic people, and more impossible circumstances that induce further stress and lack.
You just become a walking magnet for the exact things you are most terrified of.
Because your thoughts generate the initial electrical signal, your emotional reaction to those thoughts amplifies the signal, and your environment simply echoes it right back to you.
The writings actually go into the specific neurobiology of this, mentioning brainwave states.
Yes, the brainwave data is vital.
They talk specifically about the difference between alpha and beta waves. I think unpacking this will really help ground the concept for anyone who is still feeling a bit skeptical.
It absolutely grounds it. What's fascinating here is the direct biological correlation to these energetic states. The modern hustle, the constant low-level anxiety of surviving the rigged game keeps our brains locked almost permanently in beta waves.
And what exactly does beta mean for us physically?
Beta is the state of high alert survival. It is the frequency of stress, of constantly scanning the horizon for immediate threats, of hyper-focusing on the danger right in front of you.
It's the brain state we evolved to use when, like, a tiger jumps out of the bushes. You need beta waves to flood your system with cortisol and adrenaline so you can run for your actual life. You get tunnel vision so you only see the escape route.
Exactly. But you cannot manifest abundance or think creatively or find deep clarity when your brain fundamentally believes it is running from a predator.
It's too busy surviving to thrive.
In beta, your peripheral vision, both literal and metaphorical, completely shuts down. You cannot see the alternative career path or the obvious solution to your relationship problem because your brain is entirely consumed by the massive deadline due on Friday.
So what's the alternative?
To attract abundance, to actually perceive the opportunities that are already existing all around you, you must intentionally, biologically shift your brain into alpha waves.
And what does the alpha state feel like? What does it look like?
Alpha is the state of receptivity. It is the frequency of deep relaxation, of intuition, of flow. It is the brain state you naturally enter right before you fall asleep, or when you are deeply engaged in a hobby you genuinely love without any external pressure.
Okay, so it's a very open state.
It is the frequency where your peripheral vision opens back up. You stop desperately fighting to acquire things, and you become fundamentally open to receiving them. You shift from using brute force to accessing real power.
Which perfectly explains a phenomenon I think so many of us have either experienced ourselves or at least witnessed in our friends. It explains why simply changing your external circumstances never, ever actually cures your burnout.
Ah, yes, the portable cage.
There's this brilliant concept in the material called the portable cage, and I just love this visual.
It is a profound realization that completely dismantles the modern fantasy of escape.
Right. Because the fantasy is always, if I just win the lottery, or if I just quit this incredibly toxic job and move to a beach in Costa Rica, everything will magically be fine. My anxiety will vanish.
But it never does.
Never. You can quit the high-stress job. You can pack up your entire life, move across the world, and buy a beautiful house with a panoramic ocean view. But if you do not fundamentally change your internal frequency...
If you don't shift out of beta.
Right. If you don't know how to shift your nervous system out of those frantic beta waves of survival and lack, you simply carry your prison with you on the airplane.
Your body arrives in paradise, but your nervous system is still stuck in the corporate boardroom.
Exactly. You unpack your bags in this gorgeous tropical paradise, and within a week, you find something brand new to be stressed about. You become intensely, weirdly anxious about the Wi-Fi speed, or you start relentlessly micromanaging the local contractors fixing your roof.
Or you become obsessed with tracking your stock investments from a beach chair.
Yes, you literally manufacture the stress because it is the absolute only frequency your brain knows how to tune into. External wealth without internal biological alignment is just a more comfortable, perhaps significantly more expensive sell.
You cannot run from a cage that is built inside your own neurochemistry. That is exactly why the texts detail ancient, highly practical methods to intentionally reset this energy. And it is crucial to note how they frame these practices.
They don't frame them as a spa day.
No, they do not frame them as mere relaxation or self-care or a luxury. They frame them as vital, non-negotiable energetic maintenance.
It's like changing the oil in a car engine. I mean, you wouldn't drive a car for 100,000 miles at top speed without ever changing the oil, yet we expect our minds to run through the intensely demanding modern world without ever once clearing our energetic filters.
Precisely. And one of the primary methods they detail for this maintenance is grounding. Literally, physically getting your bare body in contact with the earth.
Now, please explain the how and why of this, because again, it sounds a little bit mystical. Like, go stand in the dirt. Why does dirt help my severe corporate burnout?
It is actually basic physics and biology. The human body is highly conductive, and we spend our days completely insulated. We wear rubber-soled shoes, we walk on synthetic carpets, we are surrounded constantly by chaotic electromagnetic fields from laptops, servers, Wi-Fi routers, and smartphones.
We're basically walking static electricity.
Exactly. We accumulate a positive electrical charge, which is clinically associated with inflammation and erratic cellular function. The Earth, meanwhile, has a natural, mild negative charge. It is an infinite supply of free electrons.
Okay, so when you touch it.
When you physically touch the Earth's soil, sand, or natural bodies of water, there is a literal measurable transfer of electrons. It discharges the erratic, chaotic energy we accumulate from stress and technology, neutralizing the charge and physically reducing inflammation in the body. It resets the nervous system's baseline.
So it is literally grounding a circuit.
Just like an electrical wire.
That is incredible. The writings also detail water visualization practices, which I found totally fascinating. It's not just about taking a warm bubble bath to unwind.
No, it is an active, highly intentional psychological process. It involves using the conductive properties of water, sometimes infused with natural elements like sea salt or specific herbs, as a medium for energetic clearing.
What are you doing while you're in the water?
While submerged, the practice involves actively visualizing the water binding to and washing away the dense accumulated negativity from your electromagnetic field. It is a psychological pattern interrupt combined with physical sensory isolation.
So you're forcing your brain to calm down.
Yes, it is an intentional, forceful resetting of the radio dial from beta back down to alpha.
But here is the tragic irony of human nature. When people feel drained, when they hit that 2 a.m. wall of total exhaustion, they usually don't go sit quietly in the dirt or draw an intentional salt bath.
No, they usually do the exact opposite.
When we realize our energy is totally depleted, we panic. And in our blind panic, we usually try to fix the internal void by seeking out external validation. We reach for a quick fix, which leads us perfectly into the next massive pitfall the sources identify.
Yes. The discussion in the writings shifts significantly here to expose the false remedies that the rigged system so helpfully offers for the very exhaustion it created.
It's a brilliant, completely sinister business model. The system sells you the poison and then turns around and charges you an absolute premium for the counterfeit antidote.
It creates the disease and monetizes the cure. And this counterfeit antidote primarily takes two distinct forms: transactional relationships and the massive, highly commercialized self-development industry.
Let's look at relationships first, because the texts pull absolutely no punches here. They dissect the harsh, honestly uncomfortable truth that much of what we casually call friendship in the modern professional world is merely proximity plus convenience.
It is a brutal but completely necessary audit of our social circles. We so often mistake shared time for a shared soul.
Wow, yes.
We think because we sit next to someone in an office for 40 hours a week and complain about the exact same manager, we are deeply bonded friends. But the writings ask us to really test that bond.
How do you test it?
If you change jobs or move to a new city, or if you simply stop being professionally useful or socially entertaining to certain people, watch how terrifyingly fast those friendships just evaporate.
It's the phenomenon of the work spouse who you text every single day for 3 years, and then you switch companies and literally never speak to them again.
Because the utility is gone.
The system trains us to consume each other for distraction, for networking, and for comfort, rather than actually connecting on a human level. And it gets even deeper and frankly much darker when they examine romantic love.
Yes, the relationship section is intense.
The documents argue that what many people classify as deep romantic love is actually a form of transactional addiction.
The concept of transactional addiction in relationships is profound. It suggests that much of modern romance is actually an attempt to control another person in order to fill a deep, terrifying void within ourselves.
We use them as a band-aid.
We become addicted to the drama of the relationship, the struggle, the constant, exhausting attempt to mold and optimize this other person so they fit perfectly as a supporting character in our own grand narrative of success.
True connection, the texts argue, requires what they call a covenant of presence. It is not a project plan with milestones and deliverables. You absolutely cannot schedule authenticity on a shared Google Calendar.
You really can't.
And most importantly, you cannot truly love someone whose freedom you have curtailed or compromised, even if you did it with what you genuinely believed were the best, most noble intentions of building a successful shared future.
There is a really powerful, honestly sobering story in the documents that illustrates this dynamic perfectly.
Oh, the ambitious partner story.
Yes, it follows an incredibly ambitious individual who is rapidly climbing the corporate ladder on a global scale. They met a younger, perhaps more naive, wide-eyed partner, and they essentially swept this partner up into their whirlwind life like a hurricane.
They forced this partner into a lifestyle of high luxury, constant international relocation, and grand cinematic gestures, all under the guise of building a beautiful future together.
It looked like a fairy tale from the outside.
But the reality of that life was intensely isolating for the partner. The ambitious individual was always away on business trips, always checking emails at dinner, always chasing the next massive promotion. They were treating the relationship like another portfolio company to be managed and optimized.
And as a direct result, the partner's own career ambitions, their own independent friendships, their own sense of agency completely withered in the massive shadow of this grand, dominant plan.
The ambitious individual genuinely thought they were providing a dream life. But what they had actually built was a beautifully decorated, gilded cage for the person they claimed to love most in the world.
The wake-up call, the harsh realization of what they had done, only hit when a severe crisis occurred. The texts describe a situation where the partner's parent passed away suddenly during a global lockdown.
Oh, it's awful.
The partner desperately needed to leave, potentially for years, to return to their home country, handle the complex estate, and care for their remaining family.
And this is where the definition of love is truly fundamentally tested. The ambitious individual's first instinct, driven completely by their beta wave, control-oriented mind, was to fix it.
To manage the crisis.
To throw money at it, to manage the logistics so the partner wouldn't have to leave, so the grand, perfectly scheduled project of their life together wouldn't be disrupted.
But the ultimate act of love wasn't a grand romantic gesture or a massive financial intervention to make them stay. The ultimate act of love was finally painfully recognizing the cage.
Yes.
It was allowing them the absolute freedom and the agency to walk away, breaking the project plan entirely. Recognizing that true liberation in love is granting the other person their complete autonomy, even if it absolutely breaks your own heart and dismantles your entire vision of the future.
That is the incredibly hard truth of the covenant of presence. It is loving someone as a sovereign individual, not as a convenient accessory to your ambition. But when we inevitably fail at this kind of deep connection, or when the sheer exhaustion of our lives just becomes too much to bear, we rarely sit with that pain.
No, sitting with pain is the last thing we want to do.
Instead, we turn to the other false remedy provided by the system, the carnival of illusions.
The carnival of illusions. This is their brilliant term for the massive, multi-billion-dollar commercial self-helping guru industry.
The seminars, the masterminds, the expensive online courses. The texts break down 6 specific drugs that this carnival sells to keep you hooked, to keep you paying, and to keep you fundamentally unchanged.
It's a very precise diagnosis.
I want to go through these in detail because when I read this, I genuinely felt personally attacked. It was so incredibly precise. Let's start with drug number 1, illusory clarity.
Illusory clarity is incredibly seductive because human brains deeply hate ambiguity. Life is messy, relationships are complex, and systemic burnout is a deeply nuanced problem. So the guru stands on a stage and gives you a simple, ruthless, one-size-fits-all algorithm.
They say things like, just cut all toxic people out of your life immediately, or wake up at 4 a.m. and take an ice bath and you will absolutely be a millionaire.
And when you hear that, it feels like power. It feels like you finally have the secret map to the universe, but it's actually just the complete abdication of your own nuanced wisdom. You are outsourcing your critical thinking to a catchy slogan.
Right. Then we move to drug number 2, dopamine hope. This is the intense physiological high of the weekend seminar. You are in a massive ballroom with thousands of people. The music is absolutely pumping. You are jumping up and down. You are shouting affirmations at complete strangers, and your brain is just flooded with dopamine.
You feel completely invincible.
I have absolutely been a victim of this. I once bought a $500 online masterclass at 1 a.m. because the highly produced marketing video made me feel like I could literally conquer the world. I got a massive rush just from typing in my credit card number.
The purchase is the high.
Exactly. But the business model of the carnival isn't actual lasting transformation, it's dependency. They want you craving the next hit, the next seminar, the next tier of the mastermind. I watched maybe 5 minutes of that course and never opened it again, but a month later I was looking at another guru's program.
Which brings us perfectly to drug number 3, narcotic commitment. This is a very specific, very manipulative psychological trap. In these environments, they often make you stand up in front of the room or post publicly on social media and loudly pledge your transformation.
I am going to make 7 figures this year.
Exactly. Because you have announced it publicly, you trigger the sunk cost fallacy and the intense, hardwired human fear of public shame. You feel psychologically trapped into remaining consistent with this bold new persona.
So you buy the next $10,000 upsell program, not because it actually works, but just to prove to the group that you are committed.
It completely leverages your pride against your wallet.
Drug number 4 is counterfeit community. You pay a massive recurring fee to join the exclusive tribe of like-minded, high-achieving people. It feels amazing to finally belong somewhere, but it is entirely conditional belonging.
Yes. You are only a valued member of the tribe as long as you keep paying the monthly fee, and more importantly, as long as you strictly agree with the guru's dogma.
The group dynamics become highly cult-like very quickly.
They do. The moment you question the methodology or decide to take a slightly different path, you are immediately exiled and labeled as someone who just didn't want it bad enough.
Drug 5 is the myth of proximity. This is the idea of paying tens of thousands of dollars just to be in the same physical room as the guru or to have a VIP dinner with them. You're operating under the magical thinking that their success, their wealth, or their charisma will somehow absorb into your body through sheer osmosis.
If I breathe the same air as the billionaire, I will miraculously learn how to be a billionaire.
It is the halo effect monetized to the extreme. And finally, we arrive at the final drug, which the writings argue is the most insidious one of all, the gilded cage.
This is the ultimate bait and switch.
The Carnival of Illusions promises to help you beat the machine. They explicitly promise to help you escape the matrix. But in reality, when you look closely at what they are actually teaching, they are just teaching you how to be a better, more celebrated, more highly efficient cog within the exact same machine.
They teach you how to rigidly optimize your calendar to make more money, how to build a shiny personal brand to gain more fame, how to acquire more luxury items to aggressively signal your status, the exact things the rigged game already rewards.
They hijack your genuine, deep-seated soul's desire for internal alignment and sovereignty, and they brilliantly redirect it right back into the rat race. You think you are rebelling, but you are literally just upgrading the wheel in your hamster cage. Here is where this gets deeply resonant for me. We are treating our personal growth and our spiritual development exactly like a fast food drive-thru. We pull up, we pay an absolute premium for the dopamine hit of a motivational seminar. We get that greasy, salty, immediate rush of, I can conquer the world, that lasts for about 24 hours.
And then the crash hits.
But we are leaving the drive-thru completely fundamentally starved of the actual nutritional value of daily, boring discipline. We are a generation that is profoundly spiritually malnourished, but constantly high on motivational sugar.
That is a phenomenal encapsulation of the entire problem. A true teacher, a true guide doesn't persistently sell you proximity to their fire so you can stay temporarily warm for a night. A true teacher quietly hands you the raw tools and the flint and teaches you how to strike your own spark.
They teach you independence, not reliance.
Which brings us to the actual sustenance.
Yeah.
If the gurus and the transactional relationships are the junk food, what is the actual nutritional value? How do we build real power?
The writings define this as bridging the massive canyon between knowing what to do and actually having the mental fortitude to execute it.
Which moves us into the mindset of the strong and what they call the unity of action. The sources make a very clear, absolutely vital distinction here. True strength is absolutely not what we see depicted in movies or on social media.
It's not the loud guy in the room.
It is not a loud, aggressive performance. It is not dominating a boardroom or speaking over people or yelling at subordinates to show who is boss. True strength, real power, is a quiet, incredibly resilient presence. It is the absolute, unbroken unity of knowledge and action.
The texts draw on a profound, ancient philosophical concept here. Knowledge without action is entirely empty. It is actually worse than ignorance because it breeds hypocrisy.
Yes, you can memorize all the theories we have discussed today. You can understand the frequency of energy. You can articulate the exact boundaries of the rigged game. You can recognize the systemic compliance. But all of that intellectual knowledge is utterly, entirely useless if you do not have the mental fortitude to apply it when the pressure is actually applied to you in the real world.
It's the difference between reading a book about how to do a push-up and actually getting on the floor and doing a push-up when your muscles are burning. Knowing the theory of a boundary doesn't help you at all when your boss calls you at 7 p.m. on a Friday and demands you cancel your weekend plans for a sudden crisis.
Or when the system dangles a massive, life-changing bonus in front of you, but the strict condition is that you must compromise your core values. That is the moment of truth. Does your ego cave to the pressure, or does your knowledge become action?
And a massive part of building that fortitude is understanding the concept of adaptability. The texts draw on historical and philosophical examples of the immense power of yielding. There is this deeply ingrained societal idea that true power is about being rigidly dominant all the time, standing like a brick wall against every single force.
But the writings argue that true power is about being profoundly flexible. The analogy is classic, but it's perfect. In a massive hurricane, the over-rigid, unbending oak tree snaps in half and is destroyed. But the willow tree bends completely to the ground, lets the storm pass over it, and survives to stand upright again when the sun comes out.
The sovereign individual, the one who truly holds their own power, knows exactly when to hide their strength. They know when to play the fool, when to quietly yield to the system's absurdities temporarily, and when to strike with absolute precision.
There is a vivid, almost cinematic historical example referenced in the text to illustrate this. It tells the story of an ancient master strategist who endured immense, almost unimaginable public humiliation.
He was outmaneuvered by a rival, right?
He was a brilliant mind, but yes, he was outmaneuvered. He was beaten, publicly mocked in the streets, totally stripped of his titles, and driven into exile in the mud.
Now, a rigid, ego-driven man, a man locked firmly in beta waves, would have fought back immediately. He would have drawn his sword right there in the street, demanded his honor, and been instantly slaughtered by the rival's guards. He would have died for his tag, for his pride.
Exactly. But this strategist possessed the profound strength of yielding. He endured the indignity, the literal beatings, and the laughter of the crowd without letting it break his internal spirit.
He bent like the willow.
He didn't let it touch his core.
And then he used those very setbacks, the long, cold years in exile, to quietly, meticulously architect a brilliant, overarching strategy. He played the ultimate long game. He let his enemies genuinely believe they had completely broken him. He let them grow comfortable and extremely arrogant.
And while they were celebrating their victory, he prepared a counter-move that years later completely reshaped the power dynamics of his entire era. He did not react to the immediate ego-bruising provocation. He responded to his ultimate objective.
That is the crucial difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is biological, responding is architectural. And the beautiful thing about these documents is that they don't just leave us with ancient parables. They provide highly practical daily rituals to actually train this exact kind of mental discipline.
Yes, the mental dojo.
They call it the mental dojo because you don't build world-changing, strategist-level resilience overnight. You build it in very small, intensely private repetitions.
Let's look closely at those dojo rituals because they are immediately applicable. The first is a practice they call the unsent reply. Imagine the scenario. You're at work and you receive an infuriating, deeply condescending email from a colleague who is actively trying to throw you under the bus.
Whoa, I know this feeling intimately well. My heart rate immediately spikes just thinking about it.
Yes, your biology takes over. The immediate beta wave reaction is to hit reply and furiously type out a defensive, ego-driven, absolutely scathing response. You want to destroy them with facts and boldly CC their manager.
Naturally.
The practice of the unsent reply is to go ahead and open that draft. Let the emotion flow. Type out the absolute angriest, most savage response you can possibly muster. Get the poison completely out of your system.
I call this my drafts folder. It is basically a highly toxic, hazardous waste dump of things I almost said.
And that is exactly where it should stay. Because the practice dictates that after you type it, you breathe, and then you delete it.
Yeah.
You do not send it. You intentionally master the space between the emotional impulse and the physical action in the real world.
You don't give them the satisfaction.
You process the emotion internally without letting it dictate your behavior or compromise your strategic position.
Yeah.
You rob the other person of the reaction they were likely actively trying to provoke.
It's a literal repetition, like a bicep curl, for your self-control. And the second ritual in the dojo is what they call the clean no. Now, this one is incredibly hard, especially for anyone who identifies as a people pleaser.
Which is most people in the corporate world.
It is the practice of refusing a draining request, a project you don't have the capacity for, a social event you are actively dreading without offering a lengthy, weak, overly apologetic justification.
The psychology behind why we struggle with this is really fascinating. From an evolutionary perspective, human beings are tribal animals. Tens of thousands of years ago, if you disappointed the tribe, if they were angry with you, you were cast out of the cave.
And if you were cast out of the cave, you were eaten by a predator.
Exactly. So our nervous systems are deeply, permanently wired to view social disapproval as a literal life or death threat. When someone asks you for a favor and you want to say no, your brain panics and thinks, I must explain why, I must thoroughly appease them, or I will be cast out to die.
That perfectly explains why we word vomit excuses. We don't just say no. We say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I would love to help you move your couch this weekend, but my dog has a mild cough and my car is making a weird noise and I have a headache and I'm just so crazy busy. We offer this massive buffet of excuses, hoping they will accept one and forgive us.
But the clean no strips all of that away. The practice is to simply state your boundary clearly and firmly. No, I won't be able to commit to that project. Or, no, I won't be able to attend the event. The word no is a complete sentence.
And then what?
And this is the absolutely hardest part, you simply stand in the profound discomfort of their disappointment. You do not try to desperately manage their emotions for them. You tolerate the awkward silence. You survive the phantom threat of being cast out of the cave. And by actively surviving it, you teach your nervous system that it is actually safe to hold a boundary.
It is agonizing the first few times you do it, but it is incredibly liberating. So what does this all mean for the listener? Connecting all of this together, we've talked about the architecture of the rigged game, the literal frequencies of our energy, the false gurus at the carnival, and building mental dojos. How does this actually culminate in changing a person's life?
It culminates because mastering these internal reactions, learning the unsent reply, mastering shifting your brain from beta to alpha is the mandatory prerequisite for the final stage of this framework. Once you stop blindly reacting to the provocations of the rigged game, once you stop bleeding your vital energy to transactional people and the carnival of false hopes, you suddenly reclaim an immense, almost overwhelming amount of power and agency.
And what do you do with that power?
With that newly reclaimed power, you can start architecting a completely new way of living. You make the massive fundamental transition from simply surviving inside a cage to intentionally building a sanctuary.
Which brings us to the absolute climax of this entire philosophy, architecting the sanctuary of quiet power. This is the blueprint for how you actively build an unshakable, sovereign life right smack in the middle of the noisy, chaotic, demanding world.
It is crucial to note that the writings do not tell you to quit your job, sell all your worldly possessions, and run away to live in a cave in the Himalayas. You don't retreat from the world. You build the fortress internally while still physically walking through the world.
Exactly. And the foundational concrete of the sanctuary is poured by fundamentally reclaiming your definition of currency. The system has spent your entire life trying to brainwash you into believing that money is the ultimate goal, that it's the ultimate metric of human success and value.
The texts dismantle this illusion completely. Money is not the goal. Sovereignty, complete ownership of your own mind, time, and actions is the actual goal. Money is simply an inanimate tool used to construct that sovereignty.
Therefore, every single dollar you earn, every major purchase you consider, and every professional task you accept must be put through a ruthless three-part filter.
This filter is brilliant, and it completely changes how you view your bank account. Ask yourself these three questions before any major commitment of money or time. Number one, does this buy back my time? Number two, does this buy me silence and peace of mind? Number three, does this buy me deeper alignment with my core, unshakable values?
If you are offered a massive promotion that comes with a 30% pay raise, but rigorously requires you to travel constantly, miss your children's lives, and vibrate in a constant state of beta wave stress, it completely fails the filter.
It does not buy time, it destroys silence, and it deeply misaligns with your values. If a purchase like suddenly upgrading to a luxury car you can barely afford only serves to buy you the fleeting applause of strangers at a stoplight, if it only buys you a slightly more gilded, significantly more expensive cage that demands more of your energy to maintain, you must violently reject it.
You must stop spending your life's finite energy to perform the illusion of success for others, and you must start utilizing your capital strategically to purchase your own absolute freedom.
And to meticulously maintain the walls of this newly built fortress, the texts detail systemic structural rituals. We talk about the daily mental dojo for the mind, but there are larger architectural maintenance practices for the soul. The first is what they call the cold-blooded checkpoint.
I love the severity of that name.
It needs to be severe because self-deception is very, very easy. The cold-blooded checkpoint is a weekly, deeply private audit. You sit down, completely alone, perhaps with a journal, and you ask yourself a series of genuinely brutal questions. Look at my major decisions this week. Did I act from a place of internal clarity and sovereign choice? Or did I perform an action just to get an external reward?
Did I stay quiet in that meeting just to keep the peace and be liked? Or did I speak my actual truth?
It is a ruthless self-reckoning to ensure you haven't slowly, unknowingly slipped right back into the comfortable compliance of the machine.
The second maintenance ritual is even more intense. They call it Disappearance Day. This is prescribed as a quarterly practice, 4 times a year. For a full 24 hours, you endure absolute sensory and digital isolation. 0 screens, 0 phones, 0 content, no music, no books, and ideally 0 conversations with other humans. Just you, perhaps a blank notebook, a walk in nature, and utter silence.
Which, for the deeply wired modern brain, sounds absolutely terrifying.
Oh, I would literally have physical withdrawals. I would be pacing the floor within 2 hours, aggressively looking for something to read or scroll.
And that withdrawal is exactly why you so desperately need to do it. The pacing, the intense anxiety, the desperate craving for input that is your nervous system begging to be reset to its natural baseline. It is terrifying because it forces you to face the raw reality of your own mind without the powerful anesthetic of constant distraction.
If there is a hard truth you have been avoiding about your marriage or your career or your own behavior, the silence of Disappearance Day will aggressively force it to the surface.
You cannot hide from yourself when there's no noise. The corporate machine starves without your constant attention, but your soul absolutely starves without this deep, uncomfortable silence.
And as you build this sanctuary, as you reclaim your time, your silence, and your energetic frequency, you eventually reach the ultimate final stage of this architecture. This is about legacy. It is the concept of the black box and the pursuit of obsolescence.
The texts state a profound maxim here. True builders, Truly sovereign individuals do not create monuments to themselves. They don't want bronze statues in the courtyard or their names carved into the sides of university buildings. They lay strong, invisible foundations for others to stand on.
A true leader's ultimate highest goal is not to become indispensable. It is to make themselves completely, utterly obsolete.
This is a radical, almost heretical departure from the ego-driven leadership models blindly celebrated by the system. The rigged game wants leaders who are indispensable bottlenecks of power, leaders who intensely thrive on the ego stroke of being constantly needed to solve every single crisis.
The sovereign architect, however, builds systems, cultures, and families of such high integrity and resilience that they function perfectly, perhaps even better, when the architect is not in the room.
There's a truly poignant, beautiful example of this in the sources. It's about a female founder of a massive, highly successful logistics company. Let's refer to her as Eleanor.
For the first decade of building her company, Eleanor played the rigged game exactly as prescribed by the slave code and the tyranny of tags. She wore the sharp, expensive, highly intimidating suits. She drove the massive black sedan. She sat in the massive corner office with the panoramic view of the city.
She flawlessly performed the demanding role of the fierce, unyielding, slightly terrifying executive because she was secretly terrified of what would happen if he didn't aggressively project total beta wave dominance over her entire industry.
She had built a massive empire, but internally, her soul was absolutely screaming for an exit. She realized during her own internal audit that her entire corporate persona was just a suffocating, incredibly heavy costume. She was constantly demanding vulnerability and authenticity from her leadership team while fiercely living a completely fabricated, highly managed life herself. The dissonance was tearing her apart.
So she began to fundamentally change the architecture. But she didn't just impulsively quit one day and let the entire company scramble in chaos. She engaged in the ultimate act of quiet power. She systematically, meticulously dismantled her own prison from the inside out.
She started aggressively delegating her own absolute power. She spent years creating robust, resilient processes and empowering her lieutenants so that the daily operations literally didn't require her constant, stressful intervention.
She actively changed her tags, too. She traded the intimidating black sedan for a highly practical vehicle. She completely stopped doing the ego-driven press tours, the vanity magazine interviews, and the endless industry panels where executives just pat each other on the back.
She effectively, intentionally engineered her own irrelevance. She built the culture of the company to a point where it ran flawlessly on the sovereign principles she firmly established, not on her daily, exhausting micromanagement. And then, when the foundation was fully cured and strong enough to hold the immense weight without her, she quietly vanished into the background.
She stepped down without any fanfare. She left behind a profound legacy of deeply empowered employees, a highly resilient organization, and a fundamentally healthy culture, rather than a fragile, ego-driven empire that would instantly collapse the moment she left. She became the empty space that allowed others to truly grow.
It is the ultimate expression of true strength, to have all the power and intentionally choose to distribute it rather than anxiously hoard it. But I have to pause and push back here, or at least ask the question that I know many listeners might be thinking as we reach this conclusion.
Sure, what's the concern?
It sounds beautiful, this concept of quiet power, building a fortress, and aiming for obsolescence. But isn't there a severe risk here? If we spend all our energy building this isolated internal fortress, deliberately stepping back, refusing to engage with the tags, and refusing to play the game, don't we just become incredibly cynical? Do we just detach from society completely, become hermits, and stop contributing to the world?
That is a very valid concern, but if we closely connect this to the overarching philosophy of the texts, they are very explicit that the absolute goal is not isolation. And it is certainly not cynical detachment. Cynicism is actually just another deeply insidious form of being controlled by the system.
Because if you were cynical, you were still letting the system dictate your emotional state.
Exactly. You are just reacting angrily against it rather than happily performing for it, but you are still deeply attached to it.
So what is the alternative to cynicism if we actively step out of the game?
The primary goal of the sanctuary is intentional, highly powerful engagement. Think about how most people engage with the world when they are exhausted. When you are deeply starving for approval, your engagement with your colleagues, your friends, and your community is desperate, frantic, and highly transactional. You always secretly trying to get something, validation, a favor, a step up the ladder.
But when you build this internal sanctuary, when you learn to intentionally reset your frequency to alpha, When you have fully reclaimed your sovereignty and your time, you engage with the world from a place of absolute fullness.
You aren't thirsty anymore, so you aren't trying to subtly steal water from everyone you meet.
Exactly. You mentor a junior employee not because you desperately want management to see you doing it, but because you genuinely have the massive surplus energy and wisdom to offer them. You engage with absolute, unshakable boundaries, generously offering your strength and your resources without requiring anyone's validation in return. You stop being a beggar pleading for scraps of praise from the system, and you literally become a beacon, radiating a frequency of peace and sovereignty that naturally elevates everyone around you.
A beacon, not a beggar. That is a profound shift in perspective.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today on this exploration. We began by closely looking at the harsh, murky, diagnostic reality of the modern climb sitting in the dark at 2 a.m., painfully realizing that the system is a rigorously rigged game designed to keep us eternally running for hollow praise and shiny tags.
We explored how that exhaustion is not just a fleeting feeling, but a literal, measurable frequency of lack. We intensely examined how the system opportunistically offers us false remedies, transactional relationships that function exactly like corporate projects, and the flashy carnival of self-help gurus actively pushing dopamine hope to keep us safely trapped within the cycle.
And we discussed the absolute necessity of bridging theoretical knowledge with incredibly hard action through the mental dojo, deeply learning the quiet strength of yielding like the willow and mastering the immense, uncomfortable power of the clean no.
And finally, we looked at how to actively architect an unshakable sanctuary, how to ruthlessly filter every single dollar and every hour through the sharp lens of time, silence, and alignment, how to rigorously audit ourselves with the cold-blooded checkpoint, bravely face the terror of disappearance day, and realize that the ultimate highest goal of a truly sovereign life is to build strong, invisible foundations for others and render ourselves beautifully obsolete.
Human potential, true, lasting value, is not measured by how high you can rapidly climb on an artificial rigged corporate ladder, or how incredibly loudly a crowd of complete strangers cheers your name. It is measured by the unseen depth of your roots, the absolute clarity of your quietest moments, and your unwavering ability to build a life of profound, unshakable internal alignment.
It is the ultimate realization that your vital energy and your sovereign mindset are the only true lasting currencies you will ever actually possess in this universe. The world, the system, or a sudden massive crisis can easily take your shiny title, they can take your accumulated wealth, and they can strip your hard-earned status completely overnight. But the system absolutely cannot touch a sanctuary that is built entirely on sovereign internal principles.
And to you, listening to this right now, wherever you happen to be, whether you are driving or walking or perhaps sitting in the dark glow of a laptop screen right now, the profound power to intentionally change your frequency, the power to execute that clean no to a massively draining demand, the power to permanently stop performing for the hollow applause of a system that does not actually care about you, that power is not locked behind an expensive paywall.
It's really not.
It is completely available to you the very moment you turn off this audio. You absolutely do not need to hire a guru. You do not need a new shiny tag to validate your existence. You just firmly need the quiet, highly unglamorous discipline to begin laying the very first blow.
I will leave you with one final, deeply lingering question to seriously explore on your own. It is directly inspired by the concept of the black box, that final, unvarnished set of instructions and profound examples an architect leaves behind for the next generation. Think deeply about your life as it is currently constructed, the rigid routines you follow, and the priorities you clearly demonstrate daily.
If you were to disappear completely tomorrow, look at the life, the explicit examples, and the structures you actually leave behind for your children, your friends, and your colleagues. Are you leaving behind a highly detailed set of instructions on how to simply survive, endure, and beautifully decorate a cage? Or are you leaving behind the courageous, absolutely undeniable blueprint for how to build a sanctuary? We started this analysis looking at that murky, deeply exhausting diagnostic landscape of modern success, where the X-ray machine is broken and absolutely everything on the inside feels hollow, despite looking totally perfect on the outside. But the truly profound truth is, the picture only becomes clear when you deeply realize you are the one holding the film. You have the ultimate power to step out of the dark, definitively put down the script they handed you, and actively start building. Start laying the bricks of your own quiet, unshakable power.